Hello, I'm Somi Aryan. I'm the founder of FemPeak, a place where visionary women come to gain live access to global leaders and rub shoulders with their peers to reach their peak potential. My guest on today's podcast is our very own Jessalyn and I, who is FemPeak's lead finance and wealth Sherpani. I met Jessalyn on Clubhouse, and my first impression of her was that this is someone I want to work with. Her avatar was showing a daring blue background, and she stood out with a blonde faux hawk. I think that's what's called. And now she's sporting a shaved head, which really suits her, by the way. I would describe Jessalyn as daring and courageous. She calls herself a calculated risk taker. Now, that day when we recorded this podcast, I had a very difficult experience in an investor meeting, which made me feel quite emotional. And I actually got a bit teary during our interview. So you will also get a little glimpse into what an entrepreneurial journey can be like. Now, enough of a background. Let's get right into the conversation with Jessalyn and I. So I had the worst morning today. So let me tell you about that.
Yeah.
I had my worst ever investor pitch. And I actually cried afterwards because I felt so, it may be too much sharing this on the podcast, but then on the other hand, I think, when you talk about entrepreneurship,
you have to do the ups and the downs.
Yeah, exactly. Because people look at, what we're doing with FemPeak, and they think that, like I've got it all figured, and there is no, that
there's no doubts, there's no questioning.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Or there are ups and downs, right? So, and as we are building this, I would like to be able to share both the ups and downs with the audience, and like show them the real picture of what it's like to build a big network like this, and all of those things. So yeah, I had a terrible investor pitch, which was pretty unfortunate because it was introduced by someone that I know very well, and they're really trying to help. Now, I'm not going to the details of who made the introduction here, but basically just a number of people who were really helpful and really want to see this succeed. So they made the introduction, and it was a lady that I was meeting with from an investor, investment fund in New York, and VC, and so everything check. You would think that the right introduction, it's a woman, she's going to care.
It was a warm introduction as well, like it wasn't just a cold pitch.
Yeah, exactly. So this is how it went. So lady arrived late, and I'm waiting, and there was somebody else on the call that I didn't know initially was going to be on the call. That's all fine. So we're waiting. So she arrived a few minutes late. Then she arrived. She was like, I need to answer this thing on my phone. So she was on her phone sending a text message. That was another minute or so. And we were waiting here, exchanging pleasantries around my cat with the other gentleman. Right. And then she said, okay, I don't know why we're here. I was like, okay. So I have no idea what we're talking about. I was like, how's that for like throwing you off? So I was like, remember we were introduced by so-and-so.
Were you introduced over email, or how had the original introduction happened?
Email, and actually they, and I provided my Calendly link, so they booked a Calendly session. So I was like, okay, so remember, so introduced, and it's about this platform I'm building, and we are now raising funds. And she was like, okay, so where are you in your funding? I was like, I've put in this much of my own money, and we've raised this much, so at this level, we are recording this, because some people might listen to this 6 months later, but as of this recording, when this happened today, we've raised $500,000 so far. And, I've put in 120 grand pounds, or nearly $200,000 of my own money. So this is where we are right now. And we're raising another $500,000 as part of our seed fund. So then she went straight into asking questions about the numbers. There wasn't any question around the vision, anything around my background, why I'm doing this. Because you would think that personally, I'm like if I'm investing, and I have invested in other businesses, if I'm investing, I invest in the jockey, not the horse, because if the jockey is good, they will
100%.
find the right horse. They will. So she had no interest in me as the founder, only interested in the numbers. I tried my best to, because I'm so used to starting with the
what are we doing
and the philosophy, what we are doing, what we are trying to achieve. So I had to kind of turn my pitch on its head and go straight in with those. So I did the best that I could, and then I was like, okay, so we now have over 55,000. It's actually coming up to about 60,000 women in our mailing list who have opted in, and then from there we onboard them to the platform. And there were questions around how come there are 60,000 or 55,000 people in the mailing list and only 12,000 women on the platform. I was like, well, it's a process, they come in.
It takes time.
like you have to take them on a date, right?
It's a journey.
Yeah.
We have to date them. Yeah.
It's not, it's like, it's a journey. And that's a process. And then we're looking at the platform. She was like, so how come there are only 300 people, 400 people in each session? I was like, do you expect all 11,000, 12,000 to be in every session? Like there's time difference.
All of them are free at exactly the same moment in time everywhere in the world.
And of course, I know. And of course, different people have different interests, different topics that we talk about.
100%.
So,
that's what we say about FemPeak, is that every woman is at a different place in her journey, and we are bringing content to her where she is in her journey, and we are working on figuring out where in her journey she is. So not every piece of content is relevant to every single woman.
Exactly. And then of course, like Clubhouse has got 10 million users. How many people join every session, right? So anyway, so then she was like, okay, the business model is not clear. And like, oh, you're not kind of letting me do it the way that I normally would, that
I haven't explained the business model to you.
I know, like I have a flow, and you've thrown me off off my flow by being late, being on your phone, then saying, I don't know why we are here, and like you just completely thrown me off my flow. So I explained the business model. I said, these are the areas that the revenue streams, potential revenue streams. So then she's like, show me the team. I was like, okay. So I showed the who is full-time. I was like, we work in an agile way. We don't need everybody to be full-time. The different people fill different roles, and not all of them need to be full-time. So the people who are full-time are the executive team and the assistants, the people who are actually on the floor, doing on the ground.
Doing. Yeah.
And then there are people who, like, for example, we have Professor Sarah Seeger. She's a professor at MIT. Like, she can't work with me full-time, right? So
if you ask her to quit and come work full-time for FemPeak, then she's no longer a Professor Sarah Seeger at MIT.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this question around, how many people are full-time? Well, a number of people are full-time, and there are people who work, in different capacities at different times. And then the question, then she's like, I feel like we've been here for 20 minutes and we haven't achieved anything. I was like, okay, what would you like to know? And then she's like, who do you have to help you with marketing? I said, well, I run a marketing agency, right? And this is what I do for a living. And that's where I got the money to put into this. I run a marketing agency. I've been a LinkedIn top voice 3 years in a row.
That's how we got to the numbers that we got to with zero advertising spend.
With zero advertising, exactly, with zero advertising spend. And I've got this big network, and also I work with Steinway pianos, most expensive pianos in the world. I've been working with them for 5 years. So, I've been doing all of their marketing in the UK, and work with Neurocopia Electronics. We have a whole number of clients that we work with. I've worked with in the past with companies that work, I've worked with Emirates, basically I know what I'm doing with marketing. I'm not going to go and pay somebody I'm not bringing in a CMO anytime soon, because this is what I do. This is one of my specialties.
I feel like also if someone had looked at your LinkedIn profile, that would have.
I mean, she had absolutely no idea who I was. No interest, I think.
Maybe that's just
so,
me being like ignorant. Like I would expect before an investment, like you said, investors are normally investing in the jockey and not the horse. So I would think they've done some Google of your name in advance of a meeting, but maybe that's
that. And then she was like, okay, so when I said, well, I'm a marketing expert,
I do it,
what
yeah.
I do, right? And she said, okay, it sounds like you don't need my help. I was like, okay. And she said, okay, have a good day. I was like, okay, have a good day. And
did she think you were asking her for marketing help?
That's my question, because I don't know why that was the point where we said, okay, so you don't need my help. Like how do these two things go together? Because I'm here to
seeking investment and asking for marketing advice are completely unrelated things.
So anyway, this was my day, my morning, and I cried a little bit afterwards because I was like, what
just happened?
What just happened?
Was the feeling because of how the meeting went, or was it also like, this was a potentially really big investor with a lot of money?
No, it wasn't like that, because I had no idea whether or how much you would invest or anything like that. I'm talking to a lot of investors. No, what happened, I think the thing that really pushed my button was that I felt really belittled,
right?
And it reminded me of that story of my I've said this before, my science teacher who said you will never amount to anything, and like my mother came to school and she slapped me in the face, etc. So it just felt like that.
It felt like that, yeah. How in terms of like all of the investment pitches that you've given, how many have been to a woman?
Obviously it's been much less to women, because women generally invest less.
Yeah.
But this was definitely the worst. And I'd say, like, in terms of percentage, maybe 20% has been to women.
Because Jyoti and Bijna and I were talking about this yesterday, that at least like in the financial services industry, there's still this leftover culture where women have fought so hard to get to where they are that, not intentionally, when they connect with other women, it's like they're defending their place that they have fought to get to. And so the collaborative nature of women is not where we would expect it to be.
That's so funny you say that, because that's exactly, like, afterwards I was just so in shock that I sent a message to the person who made the introduction. I said, look, the conversation unfortunately didn't go very well. When you have time, we can talk about it so I can explain to you, because I felt like if they have a conversation, I wanted to explain kind of like what happened, at least from my perspective. And then I sent a message to Lola and said, look, I feel so crap. I just had a terrible pitch. Can we talk? And I said this to Lola, and that's exactly what she said. She was like, maybe she didn't feel supported when she was going up the ranks, and I don't know, but I just I felt like not listened to and
belittled. Like,
yeah,
the way that you've phrased it, the questions that she was asking sound, I don't know if amateur is the right word, but like,
that's kind of like, but that was exactly my like, I was so shocked by the questions, actually, because if you know anything about the nature of how social media works, like on LinkedIn, there are close to 800 million people on LinkedIn, but actually only a very, very small fraction of them are engaged audience. Doesn't mean that the people who are not engaged are not getting a value. They may not be engaged, posting comments, etc., but they all get value. They get value in different ways.
That goes to something I was saying to a friend of mine the other day. Like, I started working on my app and my startup in December. So like some background of that was, I had this idea for like 2 years written in my phone for this way to sort of do travel buddy matchmaking. And I'd written it down in my phone and I'd never told anybody about it because I'm an accountant, like I'm a CPA. I don't know. I didn't know the first thing about entrepreneurship or taking an idea and making it happen. So firstly, I had no idea how to get from A to Z. And secondly, I was nervous to tell anybody about my idea because I thought someone would take it. And then in December, I started to tell one friend of mine about it. She's a software developer. And she said, that's just such a great idea. Here's 5 things that you should do. So I started to do the 5 things. And one of those was listening to podcasts, listening to YouTube videos, understanding how entrepreneurship works. And I quickly learned that the idea that someone will steal your idea is sort of a imagined risk rather than a real risk. Yes, someone can take your idea, but nobody's ever going to make it like you did, especially when you're talking about like a platform or an app rather than a product. And a product is much easier to replicate and steal. Yeah. So I started working through this idea of launching my own startup. I joined an incubator. I think you know that here in Amsterdam. I did that for 1 month. It was a 3-month incubator. And I left after 1 month for a number of different reasons, and it was the right move. I don't regret doing that. I can always rejoin later if I want to, and I could join at a more advanced stage in the incubator. But through the incubator, they give you a lot of exercises and lessons on, like, you are constantly refining your pitch, you're recording your 60-second pitch, you are practicing your pitch in front of real investors and mentors. So it was a really, really valuable experience. And they're trying to teach you a lot about, like you said, a lot of investors invest in the jockey and not the horse. And so they tell you at the beginning of the incubator, don't marry yourself to your idea. We're trying to coach you as an entrepreneur, and your idea is going to go through 10 different versions. And in fact, a lot of people that ended up graduating from the incubator, their idea was completely different than when they started, because again, it's about them and not their idea. But one thing that the incubator is very good from an educational perspective and a practice perspective, but actually working with you on FemPeak and sitting next to you and having moments like this, or other times where you've gone into a meeting and you're crying afterwards, or you've worked 18 hours the previous day and you're like, I'm fucking tired. This is a lot. Like, actually witnessing that and being a part of it is just completely different than being in an incubator. And one of the things I said to my friend the other day, because they were asking me what's happening with your startup and your app, I said, look, I'm still working on it. I'm still settling into my new role since I quit my job in May, and getting clients takes time. And once that's a steady flow, then I can spend more time working on my app. But I also feel I tend to trust my gut a lot. My gut says it would I'm probably better suited from sort of the last 36 years of my life to work on my app as a hobby, as like a nice thing to do. But I think I'm better suited as support staff. Like, I don't know that I'm cut out to be the founder.
Jessalyn, is such a good point, because so many people want to be number one. They don't realize that being the number one, the weight on your shoulder, the level, like, you will be crushed. The level of, like, at the end of the day, we have the Sherpani meetings, everybody's working on the different areas. But at the end of the day, you can all go home and you can close your eyes and sleep and not worry about where the money is coming, where the next, the weight is so different. It's like night and day, so different. For so many people, being number two, they would make so much more. Like the number 19 at this is something, by the way, that I was Gary Vaynerchuk, I was mentioned. The number 19 at Facebook is earning way more millions and way more money than the number one at like some little startup that never gets to anywhere, or even somebody who is like running a small business and maybe making a lifestyle business. So there are so many different layers to this. There's like the lifestyle business, then there's the kind of platform and like the big startup company where you raise investment and you build a big thing. And I have to tell you this, to some degree, you have to be a bit of a masochist to do this.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be somebody who loves pain. And I think I love pain. I love pain. And like my childhood was so difficult that the first time I thought about suicide, I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
I remember I was lying next to my mom. I was lying on her hand actually, and now my kitten lies on whenever he lies on my hand. It reminds me of that, right? So I was like lying on my mom's arms, and at that time, I didn't know what God was. I mean, I'm an atheist now, but at that time, you growing up in Iran, you hear the word God all the time. God this, God that, and pray, etc. So I prayed to God to say that either I don't wake up or my mom doesn't wake up, because she was so abusive. I hated her.
Something had to change, and it was either her or you.
I was so afraid of her, that I just like literally prayed that either I die or she die, So when you come from that kind of background, and I'm not saying every entrepreneur has had a difficult background. So there's so many people, like Gary says, like he's had an amazing life, and his mom was always so supportive. But everybody has their own chip on their shoulder. There's anybody who wants to do something really big, there's usually something wrong with their head, something like there's something going on, that drives them to that degree of doing something really big. And sometimes it's almost, for some people, like for example the founder of Ethereum, who's now 27, 28 or something, for some people like that, it's a kind of savant almost. It's like a form of savant, so like obviously some people go become like incredible musicians, some people go become incredible athletes, and some people go and do this in business. So there's so many different reasons why. Actually, maybe there are not so many different reasons. There are a number of reasons why some people choose to create these types of big businesses, and then there are some elements of luck as well, being in the right place in the right time, all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like maybe Facebook, maybe that was not necessarily the initial vision, but then the opportunity came along, and Zuckerberg took that opportunity, and and he also happens to be somebody who has got that talent, and he's been able to do that. So for me, my biggest achievement has been just being able to get myself out of Iran, out of forced marriages, to my cousin, like at the age of 17, to get myself out of all of that, to come to the UK, to study in one of the best universities in the UK, educate myself, pay for my own education, and work in media, become a British citizen, starting my own business, making enough money from that first small business to then decide whether I wanted to go and build a big business. And I wrote a book about the future of work. And when I was writing that book, I actually have a whole segment on this scalable versus non-scalable businesses, and the idea of, do you want to build a small business, a lifestyle business? What's the difference between that and building a big startup?
Yeah.
And when I finished writing the book, basically in that chapter, it's in critical thinking, everything that I'm talking about is essentially telling people don't do it, because this is going to be so hard. And this was before I decided to do FemPeak, right? So I was like, don't do it if you don't have a big thick enough skin. And you might think of like, so you don't have a thick enough skin if you're crying after a session. Yeah, but the thing is, for me, it's like I'm just gonna lick my wound, and then I'm gonna.
It's just a release of the emotion, because you can't ignore that humans have that emotion. It's how you release it. And some people, like me, I cry real easy, and it's just like, get it out, and then 5 minutes later, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to keep going. So I don't think that that's a symptom of, like, I don't think that says anything. If you cry easily, it's how you express the emotion. Everyone else is feeling it too.
Yeah, and I think I don't always cry easily. I used to, now I don't. But this one was really hard, because also she reminded me, she had the blonde hair and like light eyes. Like she reminded me of that teacher, who was also like that, and it just like. It just was like, okay, here I am,
the perfect storm
with another teacher, who's like telling me off, and then it's like, you haven't done your homework, and so in that chapter in my book, I was like writing about this, telling people essentially, don't do it because this is so hard. And, you will probably have a higher level of success running a small business or working for another company.
Being the second, the third, the fourth.
Yeah. But then when I finished that book, what happened was that initially with one of my clients, Neurocore Bioelectronics, I helped them raise investment. And I did such a good job. I think like to this day, probably the introductions that I made and the investment I raised for them counts for around maybe about a quarter of all of the money that they've raised so far, and they've raised about 2 million so far. So I was like, okay, so I raised money for them. I seem like to be good at this, right? So maybe I could find the courage. And also I knew that I was itching for the next big hard thing, right? And I was going through a breakup, and I was like, I just need like the masochist in me. I was like, I need another torture, I need, like, I've always, I have ADHD, right? So I on the one hand, I can only focus on one thing at a time, but at the same time, I need to have several projects because I get bored. Otherwise, I need to just sort of be able to. So even my side hustle has a side hustle.
Yeah, that's right.
But I've always wanted, and I always wondered, I was like, what if I put all of my effort, like this incredible energy that I have? I've always, like, I was in a death metal band while I was working in TV, doing a master's degree, all of those things. So I thought, like, what if I put all of my energy, all these different things that I'm putting my energy into one thing? I think I would just be able, it would be so laser focused. I'm going to burn through the mountain, let alone climbing the mountain. I'm going to burn through the mountain. So I decided to put all of that energy into building this startup, because then I wrote the book. And when I was writing the book, I looked at my references and I saw that 95% of the people that I've referenced are men. And the majority of jobs that are being affected are those of women's. And and then I'm going through that breakup, I just really felt like family and relationship is a huge reason why women don't succeed, because by the time they're about to succeed, their biological clock and their and their career clock are at odds. I remember going through that breakup. At some point, I actually told my ex, I was like, I love you so much that I'm willing to let go of my, my dreams to be with you. But then I was like, bullshit.
Of course
you don't. Of course you don't, right? And he called my bullshit. He was like, Somi, no, you know that's not true. This is who you are. You're never gonna change. And I thought about it, I was like, yeah, he's right. I'm never gonna change. This is
I think that's what's interesting about your story, and sort of the connection back to my situation is, it's like it's always been there. And I think when I hear really successful entrepreneurs, there's something that's always been there. And for me, so like my background, I grew up in a very poor family. We were always on the brink of needing food stamps or those kinds of things, but my grandparents would always come save the day. I didn't know that at the time. And I was very bright in school, very, very bright. I was doing like university level mathematics when I was 10 years old. The teachers had to put me in the hallway because they didn't know how to teach me. They said, here's a college algebra book, go teach yourself. Then when you're ready to take the exam, here's the exam. And then here's the answer key. So grade your own exam and then write your scores in the book in the back of the classroom when you're done. So I was always very bright in school, always very driven, always looking for the next challenge. But there was never this entrepreneurial mindset, like, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to create amazing things in this world. I don't know if it just inherently wasn't there, or if I didn't have the mentors to sort of coach it out.
I think it's a combination of genetics and environmental. So I'm the opposite. So I started making money since I was 14. I've always made money. We were the same, like, I mean, our level of poverty probably is very, very different to yours, because it would be a lot worse. I was in Iran. So and also I was born during the Iran-Iraq war. So for me, I had a business mind since I was like very, very young. I remember my parents gave me pocket money, and I had this little like you say piggy bank,
Piggy
right?
bank,
But
yeah.
But it didn't look like a pig, because pigs are not a thing in Iran,
Right.
you know. So so it looked like a house, and it had a key. So I would put my pocket money into that. It was just such a small amount, right? But then at the end of the month, my parents always ran out of money like 10 days or 15 days before the end of the month. So then I used to bring my little, bank, and say to them, let's take this money and go and buy fruit, so I always thought about money, ahead of time. By the time I was 14, I started teaching English, because I taught myself English since I was, 10, and started making money. Then when I was 17, I started working for as a tour guide. And this is where my entrepreneurial spirit really, by the way, even before that, when I started teaching English, one of the other things, I used to make jewelry, and then I used to go to the shops around my school and try to sell them my jewelry, and they wouldn't buy it. So they said, okay, we will put it in the window. If somebody buys it, then we will give you, a cut. So that's how I started making money, creating jewelry, teaching myself how to make jewelry and sell it. By the time I was 17, I started working as a tour guide. And one of the things I learned was that I could actually make a commission on anything that these tourists bought. So I used to take them to I used to have like these big groups from some of the embassies, especially like some of the Malaysian embassy, things like that, where they came as families, and I would take them to a shop. They would do something, they would buy some things, and then I would take them to another shop, and then while they were shopping there, I would go back to the first shop to get my commission.
That's right.
And same thing, I used to take them to buy Persian rugs, and I got really big commissions on those, because like a rug could be like a few £1,000s, a few $1,000s, and then I would get a really nice commission on that. So that was like, by the time I was 17, I made so much money that we didn't have any furniture in the house. So actually I bought the first set of furniture for our house, and I was so proud of it, because I bought furniture for our house. And when I was 19, I started working for the Netherlands embassy. And again, I was making dollars and, spending in real. So that enabled me to save. And I was really good at saved the money. Then after that, I came to the UK and spent that money on my education. So I've always made money. Money has been something that I've had a comfortable relationship with, even though my parents didn't, like my father always used to say that, that like people who have money are essentially evil, like they've done something wrong to make that much money. And I always thought that he was wrong, and didn't agree with him. So I feel like I have a business mind. So the entrepreneurial spirit was always there. The other thing is that I was always a misfit. I didn't fit into groups, and like I never do well in classes. I do better on my own, probably because of my ADHD, the way that I couldn't, and it's a certain degree of autism. So I had like all these spectrum issues that were never dealt with in Iran, because it wasn't a thing. And and I remember my teachers told my mom that she should look into, maybe I have like all of these symptoms. And she said, "What? You're saying my daughter is crazy?" I was like, "No, it's not crazy. Like, she seems like she has ADHD or something." And like, that was not dealt with. So so it was a combination of, I think for me, it was a combination of being not being able to fit into a society, and having to create my own way. So I used to think that if I'm not going to be fitting, then I'm going to create my own society, my own community, right?
I mean, from the time I was 13, 12 years old, I also had this mindset of, well, my parents don't earn very much money. There's nothing left over for me. Like I had one pair of pants, and friends would gift me their old pants when their parents would like buy them new ones every summer. Like I'd get friends' leftover clothes, maybe leftover clothes from my older siblings, but like eventually when I realized I could earn my own money, I was babysitting. I was working for my neighbor who ran an illegal business out of his home. He paid me in cash and I just worked in his office. And then by the time I was 16, I could like get hired in an actual like legal job. You know, I worked in a hardware store. I worked in a gas station where I sold sandwiches and pizzas. Like as soon as I could earn money, I was doing it. But it wasn't an entrepreneurial mindset. It was always as like an employee, as a staff person, as a wage earner. And so I was, by the time when I was 18 years old, like I sort of felt self-sufficient. Like I could go out to eat whenever I wanted to. I could buy my own clothes. Like I sort of, other than rent and let's say health insurance and some of those background expenses, I was paying my own way by the time I was a teenager. And then when I was in university, I moved out when I was like 20 years old or something like that. And I think my parents just kept paying for my car insurance. But I was paying for the car myself. I got braces on my teeth and I paid for those myself. I was still like, I was racking up credit card debt, but I also knew when I graduated, I was going to be an accountant and I was going to make good money. So I was incurring debt to get through university, which I paid for myself. I got a lot of loans from the government and I knew I'd be getting a good enough wage being an accountant that I could pay off all that debt. There was like a light at the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful that I did not try to go to Harvard or something. I went to a university in my state. I paid $2,500 a semester for my education. So when I graduated, I had like $25,000 of student loan debt and like $15,000 of credit card debt. And then I think within 5 or 7 years, I'd paid off all of that. But still, even throughout most of my life, I've never had an entrepreneurial mindset. This idea of hustles and side hustles and multiple streams of income was so foreign to me. It was always just, I'm a wage employee and I'm very good at what I do. I could pick up any career in the sense that when I set in front of something, I learn it, I figure it out, and I'm naturally pretty good at some stuff. Not everything. But I've been given jobs before where I had 0 qualifications to do the job, but I interview really well. I'm very personable. And people say, you know, even though you don't have the check boxes here to tick off the things, we think you're the right person to figure it out. And that's how I ended up here in the career that I have today. And I think that also is very interesting when we think about women who sort of, besides the entrepreneurial thing, a lot of women historically will not apply for jobs where they don't tick all the boxes. You know, men might tick a few boxes, but they see their potential. And women, if they don't tick like 90% or greater, they won't bother applying. Like we've talked about that before with Jyoti. Yeah. And this job that I got, I was like mid-20s, like 25 or 26. I'd applied for a job I did not have qualifications for, quite unusual for a woman. I didn't get the job, but Human Resources called me a month later and they said, we've had this other position open up we think you'd be good for. I read through the job spec and I said, I'm not going to lie to you. I have 0 experience in most of this. Like I tick 2 out of 30 tick boxes. Like, yeah, we just think that you have the personality to figure it out. There's not many people that know this very niche subject, so we think you'd be a great candidate to figure it out. So I did take a chance on a position I didn't tick the boxes for, and I ended up getting a job in a thing I ticked almost none of the boxes for. But still, through my career, I'm 36 now, I never had an entrepreneurial mindset. It just never occurred to me.
So this is so important that you have that self-awareness though. Right. I think many people get into this entrepreneurship thing without, you know, it's just because of the word entrepreneur now being
society says it's cool. It's a buzzword. You should be an entrepreneur.
Like, that's it. Right. And so, so you were saying that you knew that it was not you. Right. And you didn't try to fit yourself into something that was.
Well, I didn't know that it wasn't me. That. I actually wasn't sure. I'd never even thought about it. I had never considered being an entrepreneur. It just never crossed my mind. But I say this in our live mentorship sessions. My superpower is that I am a calculated risk taker. So I view risks and regret as I'm never going to regret the things that I tried. I'm going to regret the things that I didn't try. So finally, when I had this idea for an app and my friend is like, you should do that, I thought to myself, maybe entrepreneurship is for me and I just don't know. And I've never been given the opportunity to taste it. And so I sort of looked at it not as I want entrepreneurship. This is a thing that I've craved my whole life. I'd rarely thought about it. I looked at it more as that's a thing I could like, and I'm willing to take the risk to see if it's good for me or not. And so in May, when I had the opportunity to work with you on FemPeak and basically freelance what I do professionally in the accounting and tax space, I thought, after a year, what's the worst that could happen? That's my calculated risk taking. What's the worst that could happen? It's not right for me, and I just get another job. I always think, what's the worst? And because I don't have children and I don't have a partner who relies on my income, I've got my 2 cats, that calculation is just much simpler there. And it's always financial. It's not like, oh, would I pull my kids out of school to have to move back to the United States? So I'm very lucky in that regard, but it was, so the drive to try out entrepreneurship was not because I had an entrepreneurial background or since a child I'd been thinking that way. It was more like, so it's a buzzword. Everyone loves to talk about it. It's a thing that gives you freedom. Why not give it a whirl? And then I've felt like in the last, we'll say 8 or 9 months, I've just come to the realization, like, I don't have to be an entrepreneur. Just like you said, for a lot of people, don't do it. It's not right for everybody. And I also like what the Gary quote that you said, the person who's 19th at Facebook is still doing better than, number 1 or number 2 at, like, if everybody tried to start their own business, if everybody tried to be a number 1, then nothing would be successful. So there is a place for the number 2 and the number 3 and the number 4. And I think that I'm better suited as support staff. Like I feel comfortable there, firstly. And secondly, I think I just deliver a lot of value as the support person and not as the number 1. So I just, in the last 8 or 9 months, like you said, that self-awareness, I'm like, I'm comfortable that I don't have to be an entrepreneur. I'm happy doing what I've done.
So important. I really want to drive this point home a lot more, because I think too many people go into entrepreneurship because they think it's the right thing to do, is cool, they think it's freedom. It's not freedom. You're a slave. You're actually a slave, to everybody. I'm a slave to Lola, to like my team, to you, everybody.
Now to your cat.
Now to my cat, right? So you're literally, you're a slave. You have the least amount of freedom. Everybody in my team has holiday time. Everybody in my team gets paid on time. I'm the one who has no holiday. I'm the one who gets paid last or doesn't get paid at all, and everybody's needs are ahead of mine. But there's something in it that I thrive. Like I say, you have to be masochist to do this.
And you really have to believe in the problem that you're solving. People that are like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. What should I do? What problem should I solve? That's like a recipe for failure. I learned that firstly in my incubator.
I think if you're asking that question, if you're like, what kind? So really, it should be the other way around. You come across a problem, right? I didn't know I was going to do something about women until I wrote that book, and I realized, and I went through a breakup. So there was the combination of the book and the breakup that kind of made me realize that there is a real challenge here for women, and I wanted to solve that problem. So I always knew that I would be doing something, that's why I was also running my own business. I already hired a few people. That was like a lifestyle business. And I knew that I needed something else, something big, I basically, I'm the kind of person that needs to be consumed, in whatever it is that I'm doing, right? And we all have to, this is a metaphor that I always use. I say, there's some people who are like the sun, and there are people who are like the earth, right? And when you look at the the looking outside. And I actually said this to Sarah Seeger, who is an astrophysicist, and she said she agreed with me with this metaphor, because there are far fewer suns, there are many more planets, right? And the sun has to burn its character Constantly. To burn, right? It has to burn, to give away energy, and it finds its purpose in burning. And then there are people who are like the earth, who are like, you can think about the support, or the people who are who take energy from the sun, and then they take that energy and turn it into life, right? Yeah. And so the sun itself can't sustain life, which is like, I can't sustain life, right? But then there are people who are like the earth, who, they take that energy. So I feel like that's my character. I need to burn. I have to burn. I must burn. This is my, this is my essence has to burn. Yeah. This is how I see it.
I love that metaphor. I'm going to think more about that. I also want to go back to this thing about relationships, because this was like a primary driver for FemPeak. So I know you've told your story on your podcast before, and I want to bring it together with mine to contrast and compare these situations. I spent my 20s believing that there was this one and only true romance. I loved Disney movies. I loved romantic comedies. I was in love with the idea of love, and I was on the hunt for that person, and spent all of my 20s doing that and not really investing in friendships to the level that I should have, and not to the level that I do today. And then I was about 30 years old and I met him, the guy that I should have married. Funny, handsome, rocket scientist. I don't want children. I was very confident of that early on. But I also said, if I change my mind, if there's some future version of me out there that does end up wanting children, this guy would be a great dad. So he's like a great package deal. Best friend, everything all in one. And then once I had that, and we got on the relationship escalator, what society says you should do. We moved in together pretty soon. We got a dog together. We moved to another state and city together. We were ticking the boxes that people do on their journey towards marriage and ultimately death. And somewhere that's the hallmark of a successful marriage on this planet, is you die. Like that's the hallmark of a successful marriage. And that's where the journey is supposed to take you. And somewhere on that escalator, I just started getting really uncomfortable with the whole idea. I was like, gosh, this is everything that I've wanted, and now I have it. And I'm deeply uncomfortable with all of this.
So what was it that what was the point that you realized you were uncomfortable? What was
it was probably after about 5 months of living together. All of the burdens of life maintenance, I call it, arguing over how to fold towels, arguing over how to do dishes, the loss of spontaneity in your romantic and love life, all of those, it really triggered with the moving in together. And then moving to a new city as well, when you don't know anybody and you're not making friends with new people because you're sort of relying on each other. Those were really starting to cause me a lot of discomfort. And at the time, I didn't really have the words to explain what it was that I was feeling. All I could say to him was this, because I knew I needed to express it to him in some way. I said, how does it feel for you if I tell you tomorrow, if your job asked you to move to Texas, to relocate to Texas, that I wouldn't go with you because I hate Texas and I would never live there? And he paused and he thought about it. And I said, and also, how does it make you feel if tomorrow, spoiler alert, I got offered a job to move to the Netherlands and I accepted it without even talking to you? And how does it make you feel that I wouldn't want you to come with me? And the reason I wouldn't want him to come is because he's a rocket scientist. He's working on sending people to outer space. I would not want him to sacrifice his career for my wanderlust, me wanting to move every 2 years and uproot myself. That's what I like doing. And he said, yeah, I feel like I should be with someone who would want to talk to me about those things, and that we're doing it together. And I said, I don't think I can offer that to you. Just now that I'm in this, I can't give that to you, and you deserve someone that can give that to you. So we unattached ourselves romantically and physically, and we said, let's keep this friendship because there's such a beautiful relationship here. We need to retain that part, take off all the other parts that society, that relationship escalator that society put us on. We undid all that successfully, and I moved to Europe. I moved to Europe for a few reasons, but I do say one of those reasons was to rediscover my purpose in life, because I spent all of my 20s thinking the greatest achievement that I can make on this planet is to find my one and only, fall in love, share life together for the next 50 years, and then die. That to me was the pinnacle of a successful life. And now that that was not on the table, I had this existential crisis of, what is my purpose here? What is when I am on my deathbed, what are people going to go back and look and say, even at my funeral, what are the amazing things someone's going to say that I contributed to this planet? What kind of person are they going to say that I was? And on my deathbed, if Somi asks me on my deathbed, Jessalyn, did you have a good life? I want to be able to react immediately and say, it was fantastic. It was so good. I did everything that I was meant to be here to do. So here I am, early 30s, having this crisis of like, what's my purpose here on this earth? So I think that also fed into this idea of entrepreneurship as well, because that can give you this sense of there's something I should be doing that I'm not today. And what is it? I'm still on this journey of finding what that purpose is, but I would say on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being the first day I realized this when I had moved to Europe, that this relationship was not the pinnacle of success in my life. That being 0 and 100 being the perfect vision of what I'm here to do, I'd say I'm probably somewhere between 50 and 60, which is comfortable. I feel good with that, but it's still an exploration, and it's still, I'm still looking for that vision, which means that I'm always open to, I don't ever get settled into, okay, this is my life, this is what I do. Whatever comes my way, I just sort of process that and see how it fits into that vision of what I'm here to do. But I didn't know it at the time, I credit my disassembly of my traditional relationship with opening my eyes to saying, there's some other reason to be here.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's interesting. So in that scale of, 1 to 100, I would say that I'm probably in over 90.
That's what I would have guessed for you. Yeah.
I have such a clear vision of why I'm here, what I'm doing, because this is a question that I've been asking myself since I was 4 years old. I remember that I have such a clear memory of 4 years old. I was looking into the mirror, crying, asking, who am I? Like, wow, what is this? Why am I here? Why do I have senses?
At 4 years old?
4 years old,
yeah,
literally. I was like looking at my fingers and thinking, why do I have sense? Like, what can I feel? What is this feeling? Like, I would look at my eyes in the mirror and I was like, I feel like I know this person, like I was trying to understand. I was like, who am I? Like, and I asked myself, like, where was I before I got here? And it was like, and my mom said, you didn't exist, like God hadn't created you. I was like, I didn't understand that, like, so it was this question of who am I? Why am I here? Was such a strong question for me that never went away. I used to have very vivid dreams as a child. And I remember this was before we had a TV, and before and being in Iran, like there was no movies, there, like you wouldn't have seen any kind of during the war. So I had never seen anything with like screens other than like just the little TV that we got when I was 6 years old. And I used to have dreams at 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, like definitely before we had TV. I used to have dreams that when I opened a book, it turned into a screen, and then I could see things in the screen. Like, and now it reminds me like a iPad, right?
Yeah.
And I had these dreams of wherever I looked, there was screens. Like whether I picked up, there was screens, and I could interact with those screens. So those are things that I had experience with since I was a child, and this question of what is life. So there were a few things that really helped me understand what life is and why I'm here. And the moment I solved that question for myself, and the way that I solved that question, I don't know necessarily whether scientifically is 100% correct, but definitely there's a combination of philosophy and science there. And it just calmed my soul and enabled me to then concentrate on now living the life. So it essentially became my philosophy. And that the answer is, there's this book called What is Life by Schrödinger, the famous physicist, where he essentially, what he says is that what life is, if you think about from the moment that the Big Bang happened, the universe went from being in a state of complete order and being completely like this tiny little thing that then exploded to the state of disorder, because the more it expanded, the disorder expanded as well. The disorder also became more and more, right? The entropy, right? That's what the entropy is. So understanding this concept of entropy, he really helped me. So basically then he's like, okay, so we went from order to entropy, from order to disorder, and the more disorder, the better, because then in this state of disorder, as these particles are constantly multiplying and breaking down and crashing into each other, what happens is that there will be moments within this journey. So think about the age of the universe is now around 14 billion years, 13.5 billion years or something. So during this time, as we are going to, from, let's say, if the universe was like one organism, so from the moment of Big Bang, the universe is like a teenager, or a toddler or whatever, right? In the grand scheme of things. And probably not a teenager, probably more like a toddler. And then at this moment, so basically what he's saying is that from these particles randomly, some of them randomly get together, and they create constellations, that these constellations then create order within themselves. And that order is life. That's what life is. So that's why there's the entire universe, there's in a state of disorder, and then there are pockets of life, and one of those pockets of life is our Earth, and one of those pockets of life within that is intelligent life, which is us. And to the best of our knowledge, we don't know of any other intelligent lives. There may be, it's entirely possible, but there are physicists like Professor Sara Seeger, who's one of our Sherpanis. There are physicists like her that really believe there is other pockets of life. That's what their whole life, their whole career is dedicated to finding that life.
I just watched her Netflix episode about this the other day.
Oh, really? Okay, yes, yeah. So I need to find that. So there are people like her who talk about it being entirely possible that there is, and they're looking for it. And then there are people like physicist Max Tegmark who say that it's not possible, because they've done a mathematical explanation of why it's not possible. I'm not a physicist, I don't know the answer, but it does make sense to me that it would make sense that the universe will want to keep creating life, different forms of life, because that's otherwise all that disorder needs to be, somehow we need those pockets of life to. So now here's the thing. What is the funny thing about this, which is the really quirk of life, is that actually what life does, life creates more disorder. Okay, let me give you an example. What I mean, you think about you come home, right, and your house is in a state of disorder. Your stuff is all over the place. Your socks are here. There's food in the sink, all that stuff.
Unusual for me, but I can imagine it. Okay.
Yeah, for example, right? And what do? You tidy it up. When you tidy up, you put all of that into the bin. What do you do with that bin? You take it out and put it in the bin outside. By doing that, what you're doing, you're tidying up, you're creating more order in your inner circle, but you're taking that disorder and
putting it in the bin
into the next circle. So in my book, I explain these different circles. So there's the circle of me, my family, my city, my country, my planet, right? So every time we are trying to solve a problem for ourselves, we're pushing that, like, for example, we package to food to enable it to last longer by the time it gets to us from the supermarket to us. But by doing that, we're creating more disorder, right? We're creating more mess.
Yep.
We're damaging the planet. So we haven't figured out and this seems to be the inherent nature of life. So one of the things that Sherpani talks about is that these pockets of life, in trying to create order for themselves, they create more disorder in the outer environment. Mm-hmm. And actually they accelerate the entropy on the bigger level. So it almost feels like the ultimate purpose of life, if purpose is the right word, maybe purpose is not the right word, the ultimate trajectory of the universe is death, right? Because it started with this little thing, and then it keeps expanding and expanding and expanding, and eventually it dissolves. Like it just, so either it will end with, we don't know, either it will end with a big crunch, or it will just like expand and just dissolve eventually. So whatever is happening, we know that it's a death. It ends with a kind of death. But in the process of going from this being the baby universe to dying, in the process, it creates these pockets of life. But those pockets of life, they accelerate the death of the universe. But in the process of doing that, they create experiences. So really, the ultimate purpose of the universe for me is the experiences that we create.
100%.
Right? So it's the experiences we create. So then I thought, okay, so my purpose in this life is to create the most exciting experience that I can. Like, I want to live like fireworks, and I want to die like fireworks, So it's like, then you choose, you need to then figure out, that's where the self-awareness comes out. So you want to find out what is your style of experience. And the other thing is, the question of whether you have free will or not. This is such a stupid question, people. And, it's just like, philosophically, it has been there, and people, to me, it's quite obvious. It's a combination. You don't have complete free will, and you don't have complete, you're not completely in slave to your
in a prison
genes, and right, the way I see it, you're co-creating your life, you're co-creating your reality with the universe, and the universe is like, bundles of probability, like bubbles of probability, and what we are, each of us is like these, we are like a bubble of probability, and it could burst earlier, it could burst sooner, it could burst in different ways, like it could, when it bursts, it could create a rainbow, like there are all sorts of ways that a bubble can burst, and a bubble can last for long enough, right? So we are part of these bubbles of probability. I'm fascinated with probability theory because and chaos and complexity. So it's like, then it's a question of knowing where you are in the geometry. There's a geometry to this universe, right, to these bubbles, right? To understand where you are in this, in the geometry of this thing, and are you in the right place? If you think about the topology, are you in the right place for creating the kind of life, the kind of experience that you want? And I knew that I couldn't create that when I was in Iran. It couldn't. Like I always knew I had to get out to be able to have the freedom to do what I want to do. So that to me, that it's so clear. This is the experience that I want to create. That I know how I'm going to live. I know how I'm going to die. And I know the experience that I want to create. And it's, to me, it's almost so clear that I feel like I'm just going through the motions. I know I've lived it, right? And I just hope that maybe we can share that same level of clarity, bring that level of clarity to everybody. And to me, technology is a huge part of this. Technology, science, this is a huge part of this. And I think that I almost feel, as a philosopher, I almost feel like technology has a life of its own. The technology is one of those life forms. Like there's not just one life form. What Schrödinger talks about, the way that the universe creates these bundles of probability, and then they create life, right? Technology is a life form. And the way I see it is that we always talk about technology. Technology is in our vocabulary. Technology is a name that we give to the set of tools and techniques that we use to further ourselves, to enhance our abilities. But actually, there's another way of looking at it. Technology could be a life form in itself, and technology is using us to further itself, right? And the way I see it, up until now, humans and technology have been going parallel, and they've been co-creating with each other, two forms of life, co-creating with each other. But actually now we're getting to a point that technology could take off. It could actually, it could find a whole life of its own that may not even need us. It's like almost like it's lived through, the slow form of evolution, which is the genetic evolution. And now we have the mimetic evolution, right? So the reason why I'm so excited about FemPeak is that I feel like women, and especially millennial women, the millennial generation, I feel that we are the most important generation in history, because we are the link between pre-digital and post-digital.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that women, millennial women, are another level of importance to this. So I'm hoping, sorry, I got carried away with my.
No, I want to go back to this point you made about the because you've described a lot of things that I've never thought in the level of depth that you have. But while you were describing these bubbles, for example, and they're bursting, this comes back to a couple points that we've talked about with FemPeak, but also here in this conversation about entrepreneurship, that I'm imagining back, I'm a visual person, to February 2020, before the pandemic was making its way through the world, but like Europe and the United States had not shut down at that point yet. And I had traveled to Africa. I flew to Nairobi, Kenya. I then went to Kigali, Rwanda, and then I took a car to Gisenyi, which is in Rwanda on the border of the Democratic Republic of Congo. On the other side of the border is Goma. And then about 15 minutes from Goma is Virunga National Park, which is most famously known for the gorillas that you can go, like silverback gorillas that you can go on a trek and like see gorillas. But the other thing that Virunga is most famously known for is Mount Nyiragongo, which is an active volcano, and it is the world's largest active lava lake. And actually this year, Mount Nyiragongo unfortunately erupted, and it killed some number of people in Goma because it's only 15 minutes away. But a year and a half ago, it was still a thing that you could hike. It's a 5-hour trek. The wonderful and amazing security guards of the Virunga National Park escort you up this amazing volcano. 5 hours. You then camp on the rim of the volcano. Literally, you can hear the lava exploding while you're laying in your bed. And they're like wooden huts to protect you from the wind. So it's not camping in a tent. But I spent hours sitting on the edge of this volcano, just watching the earth consume itself and explode. And it was like, I can't even articulate how, like, I get emotional talking about having witnessed that thing. It is one of the coolest, most life-changing things that I've ever watched. And when you were describing these bubbles and their explosion of, like, each of us, there is some explosion that happens that's meant to be there. But when I remember looking down into that lava pit, there's some bubbles that grow exponentially huge. And then when they burst, it is this gushing explosion. But also all around that giant bubble are all these really little bubbles that like never grow to the same size. They just kind of go boop, and they a little boop.
Yeah.
And it's a nice reminder that like not everybody is meant to be that big explosive one. And I think that comes back to the conversation about entrepreneurship as well, is that everyone isn't meant to be the number one. Everyone isn't meant to be the founder. Because and also if you think about employment as well, I'm thinking back to some of my earlier days where I managed larger teams of people. I manage fewer people these days, well, none today, but in the past when I've managed people, I've worked for companies where you're up or out. If you are not trying to be the explosive energy bubble, then you're not meant to be in this company, and we ultimately push you out. I've also worked for companies where we appreciate the little bubbles that just, they're never meant to be the big one. They want to come to work every day, and they just want to be that tiny little bubble that grows a little bit and then a little burst and then it falls back and then it does its thing continually and continually. So I think it's important for people to hear these messages about our purpose on the earth and entropy and our potential explosive nature, and recognize that like you are not a failure if you are never meant to be that big bursting bubble. Not everybody can be.
Not everybody can be, not everybody wants to be. Like I said, you think about the fact that we talked about the sun burning. It's burning. It hurts, man.
Yeah.
Burning hurts, right? Like, which one is nicer, being the earth and like enjoying yourself and getting all the sunshine, or being burning, but it's a nature, like it's in your nature. You can't help it, it's and that's what my ex said to me, it was like,
you're meant to be that way.
It's your nature. And he said, look, I've done, and he was very successful. And he was like, I've done it. I know what it's like. You are going through the same journey that I did when I was building mine. All I'm saying to you is that it was so hard. I don't want to be near another person who's burning like that.
I don't want to get the spatters from your bubble bursting.
That's exactly right. And then that again went to his level of self-awareness, because I was, a lot younger, maybe less
self-awareness,
less experienced, and he was like, I've done this, I've been there, I've done exactly what you did. That's your he actually told me, he said, we are too similar, because I've already been through this journey, and it's not gonna be nice. It's not gonna be, you're gonna be crying.
I don't want the sunburn from being next to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's been such a great conversation, Jessalyn. It's been so good working with you over the past months, and I hope that we work together for a very long time, because I think we complement each other so well. And we had some very candid conversations today, and we both shared our stories and our thoughts on entrepreneurship and so many other things.
It was a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jessalyn. Be sure to attend her fantastic sessions on finance and wealth building on FemPeak. She always brings some amazing guests that you really don't want to miss. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Somi Aryan podcast on Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and write a review. You can also find the full video of these conversations on my YouTube channel and connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. Finally, if you're not yet a member of FemPeak, head over to fempeak.ai, register, and join a community that actively supports women's professional growth.